right. That sounds
Welcome.
great. Well, thank you very much. I can't see any of you, so I assume you can all see me and hear me, but if not, somebody just let me know. Thank you very much, Eric, and thank you for inviting me to join you today. Normally, I am there with you in person, but I am virtual this time, so I'm sorry about that, but it's a pleasure to be here. I am the Executive Director of the U.S. Dry Bean Council. I am entering my 7th year now as Executive Director, and it's been a very, very exciting, dynamic time for dry beans, and I feel very happy to be a part of it. I won't tell you too much about my background. I think most of you know me, but I've been working with different agricultural commodities in export development and global trade and trade policy issues for many, many years now. I've worked with wheat and with corn and with rice. I've worked with on the food aid side of things, traveled throughout Africa, doing governmental school feeding programs, but it is absolutely my honor and pleasure now to be working and leading the National Trade Association for the U.S. dry bean industry and being able to work so closely, of course, with Northarvest and making sure our goals and our programs, at least the parts that focus on global trade, mesh together. And I am very happy for that partnership. So with that said, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what's going on in the world of global dry beans. And I have a lot to say, and I will try to go reasonably quickly so I can cover as much as possible in the short amount of time that I have. So usually what I like to do is start out with the sort of high up perspective and just take a look at where we are in terms of our exports. And again, the work of the U.S. Dry Bean Council is mostly focused on export market development and trade because we do have a grant from USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service, and we work in partnership with them that allows us to do this work. It's multi-millions of dollars, but we do, of course, work on promoting and increasing the consumption of dry beans in the U.S. as well. But I'm going to be focused mostly on global trade today. So I think we all know what happened the last couple of years. 2019, we had a rough time with our crop because of weather. And then, of course, 2020, we had a very strong crop. And that just coincided with so many different dynamics in global trade and in the world of dry beans. Of course, we know the big one that happened, which is COVID, and it's impossible to get through a presentation these days without mentioning it. I wish I didn't have to, but we had quite a good year in 2021. As you can see, our exports went up pretty significantly. The peach colored bar is the volume, and the darker sort of reddish bar is the value. You can see that the volume went up, the value kind of went down a little bit, and that's obviously normal. That's just the dynamics of supply and demand. You have more product, the prices stabilize; less product, the prices are higher. So we had quite a good year. And of course, this year is already looking a little bit different. In terms of our top 10 export markets, if you kind of take a look, you can see again that 2021 was a pretty outstanding year compared to the 3 before. We had quite a jump in our exports, and this is just top 10. So these aren't the same numbers as in that previous chart because those are all markets. But you can see, of course, that big purple bar there is no surprise to anybody. That's Mexico, which is our largest single nation export market. And we did quite well. If we look at the last 2 bars there, we're looking just at the September to November period. And the export statistics are a little bit behind. They don't come out. They're usually about 2 to 3 months behind. So November is the latest data that we have. And you can see that this year is off to a little bit of a slow start. And that's kind of the story so far. Exports compared to this time last year are down. I don't know that that's going to be the story at the end of the day, but that is where we are right now. In general, when we look at the panorama of all agricultural exports, 2021 was a record year. And so I think it's important to look at that in the context of everything else that's going on in the world. The value of all U.S. agricultural exports in 2021 was over $172 billion. And that's a 10% increase from the previous record year for agricultural exports in 2014. So in terms of exports, despite everything that's happened, something is going right. And exports are really critical. So in terms of the U.S. Dry Bean Council and the U.S. dry bean industry, and I'll try not to, I hate when people read words on a page, but I'll try to kind of get through these quickly and keep it a little interesting. But just to give you the idea of what's behind those numbers that you're looking at, those charts. We mentioned, of course, Mexico. Mexico last year did have a harvest shortfall. Looks like they're going to have another one this year. When Mexico's production is down, our exports are up. One of our other top 4 export markets is the Dominican Republic. Also, we had a very good year. We reached full implementation of our trade agreement with the CAFTA DR region, Central America and DR region. That means that we no longer face any quotas or any tariffs. Dominican Republic is just open to all exports of U.S. dry beans. That in turn created some other problems with the Dominican government trying to kind of limit those imports of U.S. dry beans. And there's some policy complications there that we're going to have to deal with in the next year that we've been dealing with for some time. But we had a great year there. The interest in health and nutrition, of course, has skyrocketed. COVID's been a big factor in that. People are more interested than ever in the consumption of plant proteins, plant slant diets. The vegan movement just kind of really moved into the mainstream. The buzzword we heard all around the world, of course, was sustainability. The younger generations, millennials, Gen Z, want to eat foods that are really more climate smart and sustainable, and dry beans, of course, fit the bill. In general, our export markets stayed steady, the large export markets, and that's the general trade dynamic for us. The largest export markets don't change much year to year. They tend to stay the same. The exception was, of course, Europe, because we continued to face retaliatory tariffs there. So our gains really came a lot from the smaller markets where we saw big increases. And, those markets, a large market for us is, say, 100,000 metric tons in a year. Some of these markets, the smaller ones, are 4,000 metric tons, 8,000 metric tons. But we saw those numbers, in some cases, double. And so that really adds up. Of course, COVID, we know what happened there. That really changed, impacted, influenced people's buying decisions. We all know we went to the stores. The dry bean shelves were bare as people sought nutritious, shelf-stable options for food. As I mentioned, we continued to face those tariffs in the EU. We did lose some markets there. And I think more importantly, we lost the option to capture any new market share growth. And so when you're seeing people buy more beans, more plant protein, and that certainly took hold in Europe, especially the UK, they weren't necessarily filling that need with US origin beans because of the tariffs. They were looking elsewhere. And that, of course, gave the opportunity for some of our competitors to really increase their own investments and take some of our market share, which is something I hope we can turn around in the next year. And we know what happened with the weather, not just in the US, but really all around the world. Weather has been taking quite a toll on production, not just of dry beans, but of many different agricultural crops. So we all talk about the pivot. I hate that word. I hope I never have to say it again, but we all had to do it. Of course, we're a global trade association. Our bread and butter is getting out there in the world and meeting with our customers, with our buyers. And it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to go on a trade mission or to go to a trade show when there's a pandemic running rampant throughout the world. And so that made us take a look at what else can we do? We can't stop our work. We have to keep going. And we always have wish lists. We have tons of things that we wish we could do that we just never have the time or the money for. And so COVID kind of gave us a little bit of a pause to do all those things. And so we took that time to commission a number of research reports. We really tried to focus a lot on the value proposition of U.S. dry beans. What makes U.S. dry beans special? Why do people around the world want U.S. dry beans? We looked a lot at how COVID impacted consumption and purchasing patterns. We took the opportunity to really get our bean innovation and bean ingredients program going. And so you'll hear a little bit more about that, but we continue to promote whole beans, but we're looking more and more at bean value-added products and bean ingredients like flours. We did a number of online webinars. We did virtual trade servicing. I mean, you do whatever you have to do. And then, of course, we kicked off our first ever global buyers event, which took the place of the Mexico Dry Bean Congress. We began BeanCon 21, and we will repeat that in this year with BeanCon 22. So what's ahead for the U.S. Dry Bean Council? Well, we know we're looking at a smaller crop this year. And the demand is still high. We've spent a lot of time trying to grow that demand all around the world and in the U.S. and it's there. But now we're looking at a smaller crop, and so we have a sense of what that dynamic is probably going to bring in terms of our global competitiveness. The tariffs, the 25% retaliatory tariffs in the EU are gone. They've been suspended. The official language is that they're suspended for a year pending permanent resolution of the steel aluminum issue, but I don't think those will go back in place. They're still in place in the UK, but we've heard a lot of positive news coming out of London that there is will there to kickstart the negotiations and get those tariffs out to suspend them. And so we hope that happens. We really need that so that we can capture that lost market share. In general, around the world, we're seeing this trend towards anti-globalization. A lot of markets are, and I think, in some cases, COVID really, really scared people. Obviously, we know what's going on with global supply chains. We've really seen a lot of countries around the world start to turn a lot more inward and talk a lot more about self-sufficiency or buying as close as possible to their location. So maybe in Europe, they'd rather bring dry beans from someplace closer. Could be Ukraine, who knows? But it's something we need to keep an eye on, and it's a threat that's out there for us. We need to really hone in on the sustainability message. I didn't hear the presentations that came before, but I'm sure everyone's talking about that because, of course, we take such great pride in being responsible stewards of the land. And we know that dry bean growers are practicing excellent climate smart practices, and we have a great story to tell. So it's not a question of changing what we do. It's a question of getting that story out there. And so we need to focus on that. We're going to be facing some challenges in the EU with their new Green Deal, which involves their farm to fork program. And that's going to be looking very carefully at buying only sustainably produced crops. And that, of course, then you have to ask yourself, what does that mean? We're also seeing it in tying onto that, this complicated web of global regulatory systems. More and more countries are dropping their tolerances for pesticides and herbicides in the form of zero or very low, what we call MRLs, maximum residue limits. And so if a country or a region such as the EU institutes a zero tolerance for pesticides and herbicides, I mean, nobody's going to be able to ship there. Certainly, we cannot meet that in the U.S. We hear a lot about glyphosate, but there's other products that are in play there, and so that's something we need to keep an eye on. We have a new grant that's going to allow us to focus on that, and we're just getting that going. COVID is still disrupting our work. There's a couple of events in February that have already been canceled. We really need to get back out there. We need to reestablish those in-person meetings, but COVID is going to continue to make that difficult for a while. Let's hope that ends very quickly. And of course, we know about the supply chain and logistical complications that we continue to face. Inflation, high input costs still impacting our industry, probably will be for some time. And at the same time, we're just seeing this explosion in the popularity of healthy foods, of plant-based proteins, of vegan diets. And we know that beans are the perfect solution. And another interesting dynamic that I want to mention is China. Of course, China has always been a competitor for us, but China's dry bean production has really been decreasing to the point where they are becoming a net importer of dry beans, and they are very interested in U.S. dry beans. We've got some regulatory hurdles there, but what's also important is their exports to a lot of our competitor markets have been decreasing, which means it's a perfect opportunity for us to step in and take that market share. So what are we going to be doing in the next year? We're going to try to get through this COVID hangover as much as possible. Let's hope this wraps up and we can get back to life. As I mentioned, our top markets tend to stay our top markets, but our smaller markets are just seeing explosive growth. Chile, Peru, Japan, and Japan has just got tremendous potential. Southeast Asia, incredible markets, huge consumer class, strong economies. These are smaller markets. They don't use dry beans as much in their diets, but with our ability to now focus on bean ingredients, there are some new lanes that are open to us. And with this new interest in healthy eating, beans have a wide open lane. And so I'm very excited about that. As I mentioned, we're going to see another crop shortfall in Mexico. A lot of our developed markets, even though we feel like we've reached maybe maximum export potential, this new interest in healthy eating is going to open up new lanes for us. We will continue to enhance our PR programs. We have a new one we're launching this year. I'll show you a little sneak peek. We'll continue with our social media, resuming our travel as much as we can. And we're going to be having BeanCon 22. That's coming up in March. It will be a hybrid event, and I will explain that to you in a second. We do have a new grant to work on these global pesticide and herbicide tolerances, or MRLs. We're going to be working with like-minded allies all around the world, starting with Europe and Mexico, to try to ensure that those markets stay open to us and that they don't institute highly restrictive tolerances that we just can't meet, because that will be a massive disruption to trade. Again, that messaging on sustainability is critical. We need to get both the scientific and narrative information out there to tell our story. And you'll see in this next year, all of our global programs really unifying under 4 themes: health and nutrition, bean innovation, sustainability, and the excellence of the quality of U.S. produced dry beans. So here's some more fun stuff. Instead of just words on a page, some pictures and graphics to tell our story. As I mentioned, Mexico crop is down again this year. I think that's always a very important dynamic to look at. It looks like a pretty bad year for Mexico. They tend to put out their own government statistics for their dry bean production. And then we go out and we survey that crop, and we always come up with a number that's on the ground that's quite a bit lower than what the government puts out there. So you can see, where they should be producing a little bit more in the range of 1 million metric, let's say 900,000 metric tons. They're coming in more in the 650,000 metric tons. The average is 838. They're just not hitting it. These are mostly rain-fed dryland crops. Irrigation isn't as prevalent there. And so that need for imports will be great. Of course, we have competitive advantages there due to USMCA, which used to be called NAFTA. Dominican Republic, used to be our 3rd largest market. Now that the UK is its own market, not part of Europe, Dominican Republic might have dropped down to our 4th largest market. Still incredibly important. We do very well there. We do have a competitive advantage. We have 0 tariffs. We have 0 quotas. We can export as much as we want. This is a big pinto bean market. And as you can see, traditionally, like 95% of what they import comes from the U.S. Again, off to a little bit of a slow start this year, but more or less at the same place we were last year in the DR. Okay, I mentioned the value proposition of U.S. dry beans, and I just wanted to share with you, this information is so important because, you don't want to promote your exports in a vacuum. You need to know what your target audience is thinking. And sometimes you get information that you don't expect. And it can be a little bit surprising, but it's very helpful to help you taper your strategies and make sure that we're spending money in the place where we're going to have the best return on our investment. So we conducted a number of studies to take a look at that. The information that we got was very interesting. I'm going to just share a couple of slides with you. This is just EU based. These are the 4 top EU markets, UK, Spain, Italy, France. And we asked about dry bean attributes. This is just general dry beans, not US. And you can see that overall, we're coming in around 50% range of positive attributes of dry beans, such as good source of iron, healthy and nutritious, good value, good source of fiber. In general, Italy and Spain tend to rank the highest in terms of their opinion of dry beans, and that's probably not surprising. since those are two of the largest export markets, although those dynamics have been a little bit off with the tariffs. But we also need to take into account that we have some work to do when we look at what these same countries think of U.S. origin dry beans and those positive attributes. In Europe, we're falling around the 30th percentile for having a positive opinion of U.S. origin dry beans. We found in general that in Europe, most of the people, and these are consumers that we surveyed, think the best dry beans come from Mexico, which is interesting. But it's all good information. So we have some work to do here in terms of bumping up the positive opinion of U.S. dry beans. And again, this is really important. It informs our strategies. We asked audiences, and now we're expanding out to 4 different areas of the world. This is the EU, South America, Mexico, Japan, China. Sorry, I can't count, 5. And we're asking about the awareness of different types of dry beans. I presented this in Michigan last week, and they were pretty happy that according to our research, black beans are the only variety to elicit awareness by at least half of the respondents in each of the countries we surveyed. But black beans are critical to the Mindak region, and I think it's also important to see where the other varieties rank as well. You can see pintos over there if you move sort of the top line over towards the right. We have more work to do in terms of getting up that awareness. And, I don't think any of this is surprising to us, but again, it's just really good information to inform our strategies going forward. Okay, here we're looking at the impact of U.S. origin on purchase decisions. And we kind of separated these responses in different boxes. The first one is, it's an extremely important factor in a purchase decision. Middle is somewhat. Last one is not very important. And again, these are the same 5 countries: EU, South America, Mexico, Japan, and China. So when you look at the first group of bar charts there, which is that it's an extremely important factor in purchase decisions, again, you see these kind of lowish rankings, but the one country that stands out there is surprisingly China, which is interesting. I would not have thought that. But I think that's important because we're looking at a new market for us, one that's now a net importer. We do still face some heavy tariffs there, and there are some complicated regulatory factors. But I think the bottom line of this chart is that everybody should be thinking about China, which hasn't traditionally been a market for exports of U.S. dry beans. And we should also be thinking that we have some work to do in other parts of the world. Japan is ranking pretty low. Again, that's not surprising, but that just tells us that's we need to invest some money in that. And we also asked these same consumer audiences just about how they ranked the positive attributes of U.S. dry beans. So we asked about things like, U.S. dry beans, better tasting, good value for the money, good source of fiber, healthy, nutritious, good value added item in food. And again, we kind of see the same overlay on most of these questions. China seems to come out on top in terms of ranking it very high, that U.S. dry beans have these incredibly positive attributes. And everybody ranks reasonably high with the exception of the EU on the sort of bottom half of this chart, which are nutritional qualities. So that's good. U.S. dry beans are being recognized for important nutritional qualities. But again, we have some work to do there. And of course, got to talk about COVID. No surprises here. How has COVID-19 impacted perceptions towards dry beans? And we asked the audience questions. I think I'll be buying more. The long shelf life. I would be more likely to look for dry beans in the future when I'm shopping. You see, people are changing their perceptions very positively towards dry beans when we put that COVID question into play. And that's good. But we need to build on this so that this isn't just a one-time bump. So our value proposition, we kept hearing the same things: U.S. agricultural products, world-class, safe, traceable, consistency of quality and availability. U.S. dry beans are safe to work with. Supply is consistent. More expensive, but there are advantages. Consistency, quality. So you start to see these themes emerging over and over, and it tells us that we're doing a very good job in producing an excellent quality bean. Our outreach, I just wanted to share a few of these with you. We really kicked into high gear with social media, as did everybody. We kicked off a number of new campaigns. These are just some examples from Latin America. In Colombia, Peru, and Chile, we kicked off our USA frijoles, which also in Spanish means usa frijoles, which is use beans. So a little wordplay there. And in this one, we talked about beans being magical and their magical qualities. This is just only one example where we talked about the folic acid and the benefits of consuming beans for pregnant women. But we had a number of these. This is just one example. In Central America, we did our Todo con Frijol campaign, beans with everything. We ran a super chef contest, which these end up being very, very popular. We choose a winning recipe and we produce a video that we put out on YouTube for the winner. The winning recipe this year came from Guatemala. They made a white bean ice cream with a black bean brownie, and they topped it with sugar-coated or candied white beans on top. So, beans are amazing. You can really do anything. We did a bunch of really fun chef collaborations to keep elevating dry beans to new heights, get people to think differently about beans. We did one of my favorite activities we did in the last year. We partnered with a Colombian chef, Juan Manuel Barrientos, or Chef Juanma. He is a Michelin-starred chef. He has restaurants all over Colombia and then in Washington, D.C. and Miami. And he's the first Colombian chef to receive a Michelin star. And he's our sort of bean ambassador. And he does a number of cooking YouTube videos for us all around the world, not just in Latin America. And he does some pretty amazing things with dry beans. We partnered also with him in the UK. We worked on an influencer campaign where I'm just showing on the left here a well-known British nutritional influencer. She did a special one-on-one with Juanma. Each influencer has thousands of viewers. And so this really, the impact really multiplies. And on the right, this is the kind of stuff that Juanma does. Doesn't look like your average bean dish. I think these are black bean chicharron, like what you would get like a fried pork rind, but they're made with beans instead. And then it has like a white bean emulsion or something like that. But, just really opens your mind about what you can do with beans and how exciting they can be and sexy. We partnered with the Culinary Institute. Our lead there was Chef Brad Barnes. He's also a well-known chef, and he's been helping us with our bean innovation program, helping us develop new dishes with dry beans. And he's also conducted a number of seminars for us all around the world. These are some clips of a seminar that he did in Peru, where again, small market, but their imports of U.S. dry beans doubled in the last year. Chef Barnes was our lead chef we did the Worlds of Flavor event with the Culinary Institute in Napa Valley. This was our first time ever participating. It's basically a big food expo. We had a chance to display a number of different dishes made with bean ingredients. And we did a kitchen workshop as well. Some examples of the dishes that Chef Barnes cooked for us. These are some on the left: pork sausage and kidney bean sliders. We did pinto bean crab cakes. And then this was the big hit: these little Brazilian chocolate cakes, chocolate rum and white bean brigadeiro cakes, which apparently were the big hit of the show. We gave those out at the check-in when people, you can see the woman on the right, even though she's making a kind of funny face, but this is where people got their, they registered and got their swag bag. And we were there with our bean cakes, and people loved them. So that's kind of a little taste of what we have going on in the next year. I do want to put in a little plug for BeanCon 22. I know a number of you were probably at BeanCon 21. BeanCon 22 is hybrid, but hybrid means different things. For us, What it means is all of our speakers are going to be live on a sound stage in a studio. That studio will be in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, where we'll be producing the show. And then next door to that, we have an overflow room. And we're just doing this to be careful because of Omicron. We have an overflow room next door where we'll have video monitors, and we'll have about, let's say, 40 people in attendance who will be able to watch. Then we'll have a reception, opening night reception, and a day of event reception. But everybody else will be virtual. And so there's a limited number of in-person participants, but virtual registration is open and there's no limit. Everybody, please sign up. It'll be shorter this year. Last year was very long, our BeanCon. It'll be shorter, more focused, half on bean production and quality and the other half on innovation and nutrition. We had a number of sponsors last year, which was wonderful. Over 400 attendees, 300 one-on-one business meetings. We will still be doing those. They will be virtual. All that information will be coming out, but you can also go to beancon22.com and you can register for the event. Registration is open. You can get more information there, or feel free to reach out to me. And I'll just conclude by telling you that in 2022, we hope beans take over the world. We will be kicking off our global public relations campaign. Our theme is going to be focused on beans, small but mighty. And one of the first campaigns we're going to do is a sort of like hump day beans kind of thing, like eat your beans on hump day to help you get through your week, to power you with the right nutrition to get through your week. And this will just be a way for us to plug in and get our message out all over the world. This is still being developed, so I'm just giving you like a very quick peek of what some of it might look like, but we'll have recipes and we'll have social media and we'll have chefs and we'll have messaging on sustainability, and we'll just be talking about how amazing beans are. And this should be pretty exciting. So that's my last slide. I hope it was informational and helpful, and you enjoyed some of our pictures. It's been an exciting year. Thank you for all of you for supporting Dry Bean Council and being part of our activities. And I look forward to seeing everybody in person in 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca, for a very well thought out presentation.